This is going to be a video of sort of two sections. The first is going to be my thoughts on greenbacks after about 6 months of using them. And the other one is going to be a thought that I had whilst making this video about changing speakers out in general. The little clip of me using the 2x12 with the Greenbacks is in a band rehearsal, and I'm not the guitarist in that band. I'm the bass player, and the guitarist, I don't believe has ever even owned a bass, but I got him to play bass because I needed some footage for this video. So it's just a bit of random stuff. I think we were playing Price Tag. I don't know why I chose to play that. I kind of dig the chords, and I don't think that they would have realized that's what we were playing. I really like the sound of the Greenbacks, and I kind of wish that I'd done it sooner, to be honest with you. I've always used Greenback IRs in things that supported that, and stuff like cabinet emulation in the old kidney bean pod. I always went for the Greenback option, and the reason for that is because it gave me a smooth top end and a nice sort of throaty mid-range, not upper mid, not nasal, more of a throaty mid, and that was the kind of sound that I was going for. So I've never had them in real life. I don't know why. I just never thought to change the speakers out in my cabinet. I completely lucked out, and it was definitely more luck than judgment. I ended up with the English version of the Greenbacks. Now, in and around 2000, 2001, maybe 1999, I don't know, it's in and around that 3-year period, they moved production to China. And the Chinese versions of the Greenbacks do sound different. I'm not saying they sound worse, I'm not saying they sound better. That's entirely subjective, but there is a difference, and you can hear it quite clearly in any of the comparisons that you can find on YouTube. I don't have a Chinese Greenback here to do a comparison for you, but you can easily find one of those, and you'll see that there is a significant difference. I personally prefer the sound of the English version of it. So like I said, complete luck, there's no judgment there. I didn't even know that they'd moved production, but my speakers date from the year before they moved to China. I can't remember when this date is. I looked this up quite a few months ago now, so it's just vanished from my mind. But you can see it written on the back of the speaker. Apparently, if it doesn't say that, if it just says Ipswich, if it doesn't say made in England, some of the Chinese ones have got Ipswich written on them, but that's just to say that Celestion are based in Ipswich, not that speaker was manufactured there. Are there any negatives? The only negative I would have is that they're quite an inefficient speaker, and that you end up turning your amp up quite a bit more to get the same sort of perceived volume in the room. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's like having a natural power soak on your amp if you've got a valve amp. I'm playing solid state, so it doesn't really make a difference to me. But they feel nice and compressed under the fingers because they're low wattage. They compress very early on, and for me that's a desirable trait. Again, you may have different criteria for how you're judging your speakers, but for me, I like that. I realized after a short period of time that the gigs I'm doing weren't that loud anymore, and I kind of wanted a 1x12 cab. So I put one of the Greenbacks in my Blug Nano cab. Now this is a little dangerous because, like I said, they're inefficient, and so you end up turning your amp up. So they're asking for a spanking, but they can't handle it, because it's only 25 watt power handling capacity. My amp is 250 watt, and I know it's transistor watts, but I've got more than enough power there to break one of these speakers if I was to go nuts with the volume control. So it's both a negative and a positive. I like the fact that they compress really early on, and that is because of the power handling. But at the same time, if you're going to use it as a standalone, it is kind of dangerous. a good few years ago, a friend and I bought from a music shop a matching combo, TSL 60 combo, and the cab. And I bought the cab and he bought the combo. It was just a really good deal for us to do it that way. And I've used that ever since I was 20 years old. And as a result, it's been the most consistent piece of my rig. I've had those two speakers. One was a Heritage 30, one was a Vintage 30. And the Heritage 30 has got the sort of mid-range, is a little bit more immediate than the Greenbacks, even though it is actually a Greenback variant. I never realized that. And the Vintage 30 has a much more pronounced upper mid and a sort of a fizzy quality to the distortion I don't particularly care for. Now, all this is subjective because obviously, there are loads of guys that think Vintage 30s are the absolute best speaker for them, and that's cool. We all hear different things. But for me, that was why I wanted to change to the Greenbacks. So what was this thought that I had? Well, my thought was, I've had a lot of amps over the years, but pretty much always run it through the same cabinet. And I've been pretty damn consistent with my guitars and pedals as well. Once I'd gone through my initial phase that we all go through of what kind of guitarist am I going to be, what kind of sound am I hearing in my head, and I'd messed around with strats and teles and that kind of stuff and realized that that wasn't really my jam. I've been really consistent with the Gibson sort of sound and Gibson humbuckers, and I've only had 3 main overdrive pedals. I've had other ones that have come and gone, but 3 drive pedals, the old Governor, the Jackhammer, and my Burn unit. So 3 main sources of drive in 20 years. I've not really changed much. So everything about my rig has been consistent bar the amps. And the reason for that is that I was always trying to dial out fizz, or I was always trying to get rid of any kind of spikiness in the top end. And it occurred to me that what I was doing was dialing out the Vintage 30. Would I have bought all of those amps, and I did buy a lot of amps through that period of time, would I have bought all of those if I'd have changed the damn speaker sooner? This is an interesting thing. We kind of use it as like the icing on the cake. You get everything else in your rig sorted, your pedals, your guitars, your amp, and then you start tweaking the small things like speakers. Maybe I should have done this first, because I feel like any number of the amps that I had early on, I would probably still be playing had I had Greenbacks in that cab from the get-go. I may have made a bit of a schoolboy error here. You can't get more bass out of the speaker using the bass control on the amp than the speaker is capable of putting out. It has a finite range to whatever frequencies it's going to be able to make noise in. So the speaker kind of has final say. Whatever is last in line has the last word about the overall EQ. And some things are pretty much just baked into the speaker. Like I said, that upper mid spike in the Vintage 30, you can't dial that out with an EQ. It's always going to be there. So I think when you're building your gear arsenal and you're sort of making your tone, your unique tone, consider speakers earlier on. Otherwise, you're always going to be building on a bit of a shaky foundation. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you dug the video. See you next time. Later.